nations, many have developed differently, but I insist that the primary sector is the most durable way of underwriting long-term, sustainable, and permanent movement into the first world. I say so because there is emerging thinking that the service sector and other things that have emerged in the last few decades could also underwrite long-term movement into the first world. I don't think so, because of the possibilities of disruption of those sectors that could set us back again. Tourism is good, and all the other service sectors are good, but they could be disrupted by some of the things that we've seen lately. So the only permanent underwriter of long-term national transformation into the first world will still remain the primary sector, our land, and also now the second pillar, as has been suggested, will be the productive sector, manufacturing, and the services sector now come in, transports and logistics and so on. And then finally, has been able to put out by this report, the enablers, our education, innovation, science and technology, research, value system, which is very important. And one of the speakers mentioned something in passing, which for me, I am beginning to believe is one of the missing links to answering the question that was posed by Mzee Atuoli on why we don't get it right as Africans, as black people. And that is confidence. I think we have all these factors, you know, a young population, good land, mineral wealth, but the confidence, the belief in our ability to do it like everybody else is something that we must build in ourselves. And you've led us invariably, Mr. President, in reminding us the need for us to believe in our country, to believe in ourselves, and make sure that nothing takes away our country's long-term interest from our view. So, Your Excellency, today is not my day. I am just very excited that this is a good discussion that we are having as we look into the future. And Professor Nyong'o and the other distinguished members of his team, and I hope going forward we'll have women members into this thinking, and our young people as well, so that we discuss the future together as you lead us and you guide us in how we move now that we have a starting point from our good brother Prof and the team. I just wanted to end by saying that they have helped us answer or start looking at a possible answer for the big bottleneck that has disturbed Africa and most of the developing world, which is policy disruption. Professor Kanyinga spoke about policy disruption. That is the biggest threat to the developing world, where every administration wants to come and do what they think is okay. And I've been asking myself, how do we incubate, how do we insulate the vision for Kenya from this administration, the next administration, and the other administration? And they have told us we must start anchoring the vision for Kenya in law. And once it's anchored in law, we are not saying it cannot be adjusted, because again, it could be adjusted, but it must be difficult to adjust it. So you'll have to go to Parliament and try and amend, that law, and that incubates at least this process in a big way from disruption. So I think that's a starting point of handling policy disruption. And I hope, Your Excellency, as you lead us into moving this discussion forward, maybe you may consider to also have political parties being part of this discussion so that nobody feels left behind. And when I say political parties, it means anybody, even if it's an opposition political party and you want to build into the thinking around this national vision, I think they should be welcome from as early as possible, because this is not about your administration. It is not about a particular political party. And political parties, being institutions of our governance, should be invited from very early, if those that want to participate, so that we depoliticize this matter. Mr. President, I've spoken for too long, which is unlike me, because the moment was a bit special. Welcome and speak to us.
Asante sana. Distinguished guests, friends, this is a very special morning. The hallmark of every great nation is not that it has all the answers. It is that it never stops asking the right questions. Such nations possess the confidence to examine themselves honestly, the wisdom to learn from experience, and the courage to continually renew themselves for the future. They understand that national transformation is never a destination to be reached. Rather, it is a continuous process of reflection, adaptation, and reinvention. It was in recognition of this truth, in my State of the Nation address last year, I invited Kenyans to begin looking beyond today's challenges and to start reflecting on what our future should look like. As part of that national reflection, I informed the nation of my extensive consultation with current and former national leaders, including my predecessor, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the late Right Honorable Raila Odinga. I have also engaged governors, members of parliament, business leaders, professionals, scholars, and young people. In my conversation with the late Right Honorable Raila Odinga, he consistently reminded me that no nation has ever developed without inclusivity and unity in diversity. I remember he mentioned to me about infrastructure, and infrastructure. My discussions with President Uhuru Kenyatta similarly underscored the importance of continuity in national development and the need to build upon foundations already laid. Together with many other engagements, those reflections reinforced a simple but profound lesson. Every nation that has transformed itself first imagined a future greater than its present, and then pursued that future with discipline, consistency, and patience. In that same State of the Nation address, I informed Kenyans that having restored stability, rebuilt confidence, strengthened our economy, and laid the foundation for sustained, inclusive growth under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, we were now ready to take Kenya to the next level. I therefore outlined our roadmap for the next phase of our country's transformation, including the establishment of two enduring national institutions: the National Infrastructure Fund, to finance the infrastructure that will underpin our future competitiveness, and the Sovereign Wealth Fund, to preserve and invest our national wealth for the benefit of the future generations. I am pleased that since then, we have moved from commitment to implementation. The National Infrastructure Fund has now been established in law, its board appointed, and the institution's secretariat is underway. The Sovereign Wealth Fund has likewise been established in law and will now be operationalized, completing another important milestone in building the institutions that will support Kenya's long-term development. These institutions form part of a broader strategy that is already guiding Kenya's long-term transformation into a competitive first world country. But institutions alone do not build great nations. They must also be guided by great ideas. Following extensive consultations with many stakeholders, particularly with the former Prime Minister, and as part of our broader national reflection, I invited Professor Hiroyuki Hino, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, and their distinguished colleagues to undertake an exercise in scholarship and strategic thinking on Kenya's future beyond Vision 2030. Today, we receive the outcome of that important assignment. On behalf of the government and the people of Kenya, and on my own behalf, I sincerely thank Professor Hino, who is not here with us. He was meant to be here, but due to flight complications, he was not able to come. But I'm told he will be joining us in due course. Thank Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, Professor Michael Chege, Professor Karuti Kanyinga, Professor Peter Wanyande, and every contributor for this remarkable act of scholarship and patriotism. Asanteni sana. It is true that when I discuss this matter with colleagues and the senior leaders in our country, we said let's start somewhere. And I did ask Professor Hino, Professor Michael, and Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o here to give us some ideas. And they developed a team with which they worked with, and we are very happy that we now have a report. This proposal is a thoughtful and valuable contribution to an important national conversation. Its value lies not in providing every answer, not even in the composition of the team, but in asking important questions, challenging our assumptions, broadening our thinking, and enriching our reflection on the choices that will shape Kenya's future. All these efforts are driven by one larger reality. For nearly 2 decades, Vision 2030 has provided our nation with a shared sense of direction. It has guided reforms, inspired investment, and shaped Kenya's development journey. But every nation and every national vision eventually reaches its sunset. As Vision 2030 approaches its conclusion, the responsibility now falls upon our generation to imagine what comes next. I have just had an opportunity to glance through this report. While I have much more to study and reflect upon, I am encouraged that many of the issues it raises speak to the strategic direction we have already begun pursuing. Far from beginning from scratch, the report builds upon foundations already being laid while offering thoughtful perspectives that can enrich Kenya's long-term transformation. These are ideas that deserve careful study, thoughtful reflection, and broad national engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, development cannot be a project of one administration, nor should every election require us to abandon one national vision and begin another. Professor has told us nations don't develop by accident. It has to be intentional, deliberate, planned. Nations that achieve lasting prosperity succeed because they sustain a common purpose across decades, even as administrations change. Kenya must cultivate that same discipline. We must think beyond electoral cycles, sustain what works, improve what can be made better, and build a national consensus around our long-term aspirations. I have said that we have done so much to get our country's economy on the rails. And 3 years ago is so fresh in my mind when we sat in a room called Room 6 here with colleagues and friends, including David and my Council of Advisors. And that the situation then was very different from the situation today. In that room, 3.5 years ago, we were grappling with a $2 billion debt that was threatening to torpedo our country. Today here, we're discussing the National Infrastructure Fund, which has $2.7 billion cash, not debt. That, in my opinion, is significant. Also, when I had a conversation with my predecessor, and he talked to me about continuity, I remember when we prepared the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, and I am very proud about the manifesto that we wrote. Sometimes I ask myself how we managed to write such a manifesto. And I want to thank my predecessor, President Uhuru Kenyatta. He gave me leave of absence for like 2 years. And I used that time to write this manifesto. With David and colleagues, we sat in my office in Karen and we went through. And most of what is in that manifesto has a huge element of continuity. Whether it is on education, on health, on housing, on agriculture, it has a big reflection on what we had tried to do in Jubilee under President Uhuru. We remember very well that the foundation was laid on our education. First President of Kenya laid the foundation on matters education. The second president expanded education, created more institutions, additional universities. President Mwai Kibaki came with universal primary education. President Kenyatta told us effectively that we must have 100% transition. And it has been my responsibility to make sure that when we have 100% transition, we have the classrooms. That's why we built 23,000 classrooms to eliminate the gaps that were there. We must have enough teachers. That's why we've hired 100,000 teachers. And I want to say we have worked on the university funding model now, or higher education funding model for that matter. And because we have members of parliament here, including the chair of education, Mr. Meli here, that now we have in parliament the final version of how we are going to make higher education universal. Finally, it will not matter the background of any child in Kenya. It will matter how good they are only. And going into the future, I know we have been trying to grapple with how do we fund our higher education in colleges, in our Kenya medical training centers, and in our universities. We tried the differentiated model. I think the vice chancellors here know it didn't work because it made most of our universities almost close down. Because while we promised 80% funding, we went down to 40%, and most universities suffered. We have worked on what we thought was equity, where we said parents will contribute a small portion, we will give a portion of loan, we will give a portion of scholarship. That creates equity, but it's not good enough. Now we are moving to universal under the amendments we have taken to Parliament. So going forward, any university, any student, so long as they have passed their exam and they have been placed in a college or a university, each one of them will get full funding for their higher education. It will be the choice of parents if they want to pay. But if parents don't want to pay, we now have a model that will pay for every child. And we are doing it because we want to be deliberate. Countries that are ahead of us, that we were together, had high quality education. Education was a central pillar. My team tells me that education makes us equal and has no equal. Do you remember that phrase somewhere? That is where we are taking this. And I want to implore on Parliament to expedite the amendments to the Higher Education Loans Board so that beginning September, we can make sure that any child, because we have incidences, for example, where a child from an underprivileged family who qualifies to do medicine fails to do medicine because their parents cannot afford to pay the household contribution and have to change to go and do a different course. We want to stop that. We want to make sure that if a child qualifies to do engineering or medicine, funding does not deter them from achieving their goal. That the government of Kenya must be able to support every child. And on and on. As government, we shall now study this proposal carefully. We shall engage with its recommendations, consult widely, reflect on the ideas this proposal advances, and once that process has been concluded, I will communicate the way forward as we shape Kenya's next long-term national vision. And as we undertake that process, I also invite all the stakeholders represented here today to study this proposal carefully and engage constructively with the ideas it advances. I want to encourage you to carry this conversation into our universities, research institutions, businesses in our counties, chair of Council of Governors, professional associations, places of worship, and in our communities and villages. The next chapter of Kenya's development cannot be written by government. It must be shaped by the collective wisdom, experience, and participation of the Kenyan people. Today's ceremony, therefore, does not mark the end, but the beginning of a process. Let us approach this task with confidence, humility, and a shared purpose, determined to leave to the future generations not merely a stable economy, but a stronger nation. I have listened to the good professors who spoke here, and as I continue to listen to them and their perspectives and where we've come from and how many have borrowed ideas from us, used those ideas to do better than us, it calls upon us as a people now to imagine the future we are all looking towards and to do the things that will never again make us drop the ball. And I must speak specifically to the people sitting here and those outside here who are leaders. You know, the responsibility, friends. I know we have tried to give many explanations on why we haven't moved as we should or as we expected. The biggest challenge in my reflection is that leadership must play a very central role. Political leaders, business leaders, civil society leaders, professional leaders, all leaders, religious leaders, we must all bring our leadership to bear for us to move this country to the next level. And we must own up that it is us. And that is why I keep saying I will lead from the front as much as is practically possible for me. I will not try to hide behind, maybe so-and-so, maybe this was not. Because what we have achieved today in the last 3 years has not been easy. I had many opportunities to back down and to say, okay, it's become difficult. The courts have decided. The people have said something different. Some groups have pushed back. But you see, together, we have moved. And I want to appreciate that Parliament has made a huge contribution. The courts have assisted us to create a better future. I remember on housing, for example, the court suggested to us that please go and do a proper law. And we went and did a proper law. So they have made a contribution towards where we are going. The people gave their views, and everybody has come together. And that is why we are implementing that process. So it takes leadership from across sectors for us to be able to move forward. You have said, Professor Kanyinga, that, we were better than China in 1981, 82, 83. I mean, that is so recent. Every one of us here was born by then, right? Just imagine that. That China was just a, country poorer than us. How many years ago? 30 years ago. Look at where they are. So when we say that this great country of ours can become a first world country in our generation, it is doable. Play your part, as Anyang Nyong'o told us. It is doable, play your part. Everybody must play their part. And we must believe in ourselves. We must believe. The challenge, that I come across with many people in leadership positions is that they have given up. They are just there, telling us how impossible things are, how others have tried and failed, how this has been tried and failed. So what the hell are you doing if you have no energy to move things to the next level? Please exit. Get out of the way. You're causing a jam. Honestly, if you have no energy to move anything anywhere, you're just a stumbling block. You are, So really, we must believe in ourselves, and we must believe in a greater Kenya than the one we have today. I am so persuaded about a first world country that is Kenya, that we must do everything and anything to get ourselves going. When Professor Kanyinga said how Kenya was better than many countries, we were better than this country, we were better than this country. I saw a report the other day, about, I think, a week ago, and I asked my gentleman there to Google it for me. Can you bring it? I want to read that thing. Yeah, this was just a report, I think, a few days ago. And the report says, just hold on, yeah, it says here, Kenya's stock market ranked among the world's best performing markets. This is 4 or 5 days ago. And this is the story. The Nairobi Securities Exchange has indeed been ranked as the 4th best performing stock market globally in the first half of 2026, delivering an impressive all-share index return of plus 26%. The bourse outperformed major international markets like the US Nasdaq, the UK FTSE 100, China's Shanghai Composite. Did you get that? Yeah? This is not my report. You can go and Google it. Right? We outperformed the US Nasdaq, the UK's FTSE, the China's. This is not many years ago, Professor Kanyinga. This is last week. So we were doing well then. We have begun to do well again. Maybe I should read a bit of it. Just the primary catalyst fueling this historic rally include banking sector surge, strong corporate earnings, and renewed investor confidence that have given massive growth, with the banking index delivering exceptional returns. Top performing stocks, companies like Car and General, Kenya Airways, I&M Bank, posted staggering gains for investors shifting to equity. Lower yields on government bonds, you know what that means, have sparked a localized shift towards equities, pushing the Nairobi Securities Exchange market capitalization to historic high of over 3.8 trillion. That is Kenya. So if any one of you had any doubt in the possibilities that this country can make, please start believing in your country. Start believing in your country. And as we engage in this process, because it's going to be a robust process, it's not going to end in weeks or months, maybe it'll take us a year or so, we must have a robust conversation as a country on what the future of Kenya is. This is not about the next election. This is about the future of Kenya. Yeah, the future of Kenya. The next election will come and go, but we must focus, because whoever wins or loses the next election will be here. Nobody's going to leave the country. So we're going to be here, and the future of Kenya will matter to everybody, those who win and those who lose. Yeah? And so it is very important that we think about the future of our country. And finally, as we focus about that future, I have said we must believe in ourselves, we must believe in our country, and we must be patriotic. And as been said here, integrity must be the benchmark of our engagements. We must be honest, brutally honest with ourselves. I will give you an example. We are a country that believes we are a robustly democratic country. When I went to the G7, among the issues that was in conversation was artificial intelligence and how it's going to power the future, and how social media is going to, it continues to affect society positively and negatively. And Kenya, for your information, is number one in the whole world in the use of social media. Number? It is said that every Kenyan, or on average, Kenyans spend 4 hours and a few minutes every day you know? And all the stuff in there, you know what is in that social media story, you know? But even with all that, we are still surging forward. We're still moving forward. And it is very important, therefore, for us to think about, I have said, the education of our country, the security of our country. It is very important. You've had reflections by some people here who have told us about Khartoum. Khartoum was a beautiful city 3 years ago. Today it is rubble. And the world is moving on. The rest of the world is moving on. They have destroyed their country, but the rest of the world is moving on. People are trying to help. We're trying to do whatever we can do. So we must secure our country. I have been following the debate. You know, we had the demonstrations, democratic, constitutional, legal. But we also have criminals and thugs and characters who destroy people's property, steal from people, burn down buildings. And you know, we are unable to make a decision. You know, you find people who've come to town, they've destroyed, burned down shops, destroyed people's property. And, you know, the conversation is, please, you know, these are our children. You know, these are our children, so we must listen to them, which is okay. You know, yes, must listen to them. We continue. Some people arrested, you know, with criminality, taken to court. They're given a bond of 200 shillings. They live there, you know, because they're our children. And then they go on. They now go to political rallies. And then we have goons. And then I don't know whether we want to say again, these are our children. The goons. So, you know, we really need to have a candid conversation about criminality, the rule of law, security of our nation. It cannot be the case. There cannot be any defense for criminality. There cannot be any defense for breaking the law. I am very happy that the last time there was an attempt for criminality in town and we stopped it, you know, many Kenyans agreed that no, it's now time for us to say no to people who want to ban our property. And that is going to be the future. I am very, it's now clear that everybody, every sector of our society, the business leaders, religious leaders, political leaders, have all agreed that having lawlessness, goons and all these other characters, criminals, should be stopped. Now that we have a consensus, our security agencies must do their job. Within the law, they must do their job and they must stop criminality. You know, that is how we are going to secure Kenya's future. Even as we discuss this future of our nation in the context of what we are saying. So we will go through this report, and in a short while, I will then propose a way forward on how this report can now, you know, ignite a national conversation for all of us. You know, no political parties, no religious. I'm saying no no divisions. You know, it's not going to be about members of this or that. It's going to be about all of us, all political parties involved, all sectors of our society involved, all professional groups, civil society groups, religious organizations, business people, political parties, all Kenyans from all walks of life should be able to participate in a conversation about the future of our country and how we are going to secure it beyond the competition of political administrations that will come and go, but our goal must remain the same. That is what other countries have done, and that is why they are way ahead of us. And so we must move together. Once again, I thank Professor Hino, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, Professor Michael here, Professor Karuti Kanyinga, Peter Wanyande, and your team. And I hope, Professor, when we assemble the next team, we will have a more balanced, with young people on board, with women on board, with other professional groups on board, so that, and I'm sure that that will be the case as we go into the future. Thank you very much for your insights, and all your distinguished colleagues, and all those who contributed to this very important work, and to all of us for these moments of reflection. Asanteni sana, and God bless you.
Wonderful. Another round of applause.